everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show YouTube channel. The best way to support the show on this YouTube channel is to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and or share it with a friend. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, and whichever way you choose to support the show, I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. I hope that today's message and episode brings some bit of positive change to your life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I am your host, Emily Hayden, and today we have a guest in the studio. You guys have seen him multiple times before. At this point, he needs no introduction. Tommy Vext.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Or buongiorno.
Bom dia.
What's that? That's
Portuguese.
Brazilian? Oh, Portuguese, yeah, same thing.
Been doing my Portuguese lessons recently.
That's right, yeah. How's that going?
Pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
I found a new app, Babbel, and I think that's better for like conversation. Duolingo is super easy because it's like a game, and so you sit there and you think you know what you're doing, but then when you get to a blank, you're like, I have no idea.
It's not like the back in the day we just had Rosetta Stone.
Apparently, that's still pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you speak any other languages?
No, I speak enough. I can find the bathroom, order food, find my hotel, or ask for help in French, Spanish, and whatever, you know.
I know how to say I don't know in Russian. I figured that would help.
Yeah, and like thank you. Like, Spasiba. Yeah. I've only been to Russia. I've been to 2 trips to Russia, and I played there twice, but I've only been to Moscow and St. Petersburg.
You've been pretty much everywhere, though. You've done a ton of traveling.
I haven't been to India or China or Japan.
I would love to go to India. Yeah.
Just interested. Well, now that Putin has solved the COVID problem.
Oh my God, we won't get into that.
Well, all right. Maybe we will. I don't know.
No, we're gonna
be one of those shows.
We're gonna reel it back in over here.
Well, you know what? Because we're gonna talk about addiction.
Yeah.
But political addiction is a thing too.
So let's do that.
We're gonna all kinds of addiction. Yeah.
Yeah. Today's topic for the episode is addiction in all different manifestations. So let's just hit it straight. So let's talk first about why you are qualified to talk on addiction.
Well, first of all, I'm coming up on 13 years sober.
That's wild.
Yeah, in May. So it's a couple months away, but
May 18th.
May 18th. Yeah, that's coming up, but. Not only being sober from drugs and alcohol and all that other stuff, I've gone into other programs. Like, I think what happens for addicts is over periods of time, addiction manifests itself either in finances or in sex or in, there's workaholics, there's DA programs, Debtors Anonymous.
What is that?
Debtors Anonymous.
What is that?
It's people who can't, the way that they compulsively buy things, and they don't balance out their finances.
Oh, like they're in debt always.
Yeah. Okay. And so they think they need things, and then they open credit cards, and then they bury themselves in debt. There's Gamblers Anonymous, right, which is kind of, I think, is related to the same kind of function in the brain. Mm-hmm. There's Overeaters Anonymous. Mm-hmm. There's like eating disorders. There's sex addiction. There's love addiction. So there's lots of things. Yeah.
And what do you think is like the root of all of this, right? Because it's like they're having these different ways to fulfill something, right? Like what's the root of them going towards this addiction?
Well, I mean, it's debatable. I mean, it's with alcoholism and drug addiction, it's a disease, but it's also self-diagnosed. So, it's almost one of those things where it's hard, the evidence is in front of you for you to identify and understand, you can take a 21 questions and see how you do, So I think with each individual person, I might not have, say, problems with money, but then I have problems in sex, or I might not have problems with, people are addicted to their phones.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the most widespread, like technology addiction is the newest form of addiction. And a lot of people don't realize that it's not really
healthy.
Well, it's not that it's not healthy. It's that it's not their fault. Like our phones, all the apps and everything are designed by the top engineers who have made the
algorithm.
Yeah, no, it's not. Well, the algorithm does its thing on its own. It was made to do its thing on its own, but it replicates. Swiping and everything else was based off of Vegas casinos and slot machines.
Right, like the dopamine hit.
Yeah, so all that. We're constantly getting inundated with information, and we're constantly, and then what the algorithm does is its purpose is to show you things that you react to based on your behavior online. so you keep you on the phone. So it's literally like imprisoning you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like last night we had dinner and I was like, I'm at the point where like when I sit down at dinner, I turn my phone off and I'm like, hey, and I give my phone away from me till dinner is over.
Yeah.
Because
you found yourself on it too much.
Well, just even not just as a social media person, as a businessman who owns multiple businesses and like has employees and constantly being on the phone, being on the phone. Like, what if somebody needs me? And right now I'm in a space where I've elected to take a couple months off after, and I still find myself on my phone.
Well, it's like once you create those habits, right, where you're in work mode, you're in hustle mode, you're on the road, touring everywhere, always available. I think it's hard to break that habit and that pattern of like always being available and ready to, respond immediately.
Yeah, but it's not good for your mental health.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, you need breaks. You need breaks from things like that. And like, I think, it's hard too, because society will, if society accepts something as normal, it takes longer for us to realize that something is wrong, right? Until we feel bad, right?
Until it's negatively affecting our lives.
Yeah, so like if I go online, and it's hard too, because like somebody, some people monetize social media, right? And it becomes, then you're like, oh, it's a job and I got to go do this. And then you're like, you feel obligated to do all this stuff. And I got to post this and I got to do that. And then, then you go into wormholes. Like how many times have we all gone into like YouTube holes? And I'm like, well, did you know this? Like that, people are like, how do you know so much about random things? I'm like, because I just go into, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you know that the giant Japanese sea otter can hold 3 times its own body weight and breastfeeds its young for more than 6 months? And people are like, who cares? And I'm like, oh yeah.
Or the beanbag thing.
Yeah.
Beanbags are a lie.
Yeah, so are peanuts. A peanut is neither a peanut nor a nut. It's coffee talk.
Coffee talk.
But
okay.
Yeah, but see what happens with the ADD?
Yeah.
So that's what happens. It's like people are like, oh, I have ADHD or I'm like, no, you have like cell phone sickness.
100%. Like, think about it this way. You got to think about the effect of going through so many different emotions in a short time period, right? So you're scrolling on your phone and you see something that makes you happy and then sad and then angry and then you feel insecure or whatever it is, right? So you're experiencing these array of emotions that you were never meant to go through that many emotions in that small amount of time.
That's called emotional lability. And it's also the side effect of coming off opioids or drugs like Xanax. Actually, when you're detoxing from those drugs, your brain normally flips. So the way that we go in through these different social windows and this, that, the other, and we're seeing a happy video and a sad video and a cat and then porn and then, this person works out. I'm like, I got to go to the gym. I'm like, but I'm sitting on my couch still. I'm avoiding doing cardio, all that stuff. As your head's like, boop, 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 boop. What happens is you lose critical thinking. And you become highly reactive because you're in a frontal lobe emotional mental state of like bing, bing, bing.
I kind of feel like it's one or the other. I feel like you either become highly reactive or numb to everything.
Well, it's suggestive. Like, for example, a perfect example of what's going on right now is a very controversial topic, which I'm not, I'm highly educated on is.
Are you segueing us into this right now?
Well, no, like the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, which has been going on for like 8 to 10 years.
Yeah,
it's been going on, right? There's been, people, you have to always take a look at, and I've seen people on conservative and Democratic sides. Everyone's like, we need to unite and stand with Ukraine, and I'm like, because we have to defend democracy. I'm like, Ukraine is not a democracy. They're absolutely not a democracy. They are a dictatorship. And the only reason why our country is okay with this is because we've partaken with NATO in implanting the dictator that we want, that we like, that does what we say. And Zelensky is a horrible, horrible leader who has imprisoned his political opposition unjustifiably and also arrested and imprisoned members of the press and news networks that openly criticized him.
So how do you think people on social media have kind of portrayed their social media addiction, maybe even political addiction, when it comes to like social media and real life circumstances like this that are happening?
Well, people are highly reactive. They get an emotional reaction. They see videos and they don't understand what's going on. For example, it's as complex and confusing as the Israel-Palestine issue. And so in this geopolitical climate, you have Americans who have no idea what's going on and are not political science majors or don't have any background in global studies, and everyone becomes like a professor, of virtue signaling without understanding the facts.
Well, and also I think it's easy to get manipulated on social media, on the news, if you're not aware to the fact that everything has an agenda or an intention behind it, right? So if you're consuming this content without the realization that there's some sort of intention behind what it is that they're portraying and how they're portraying it, I think you can get swayed really easily.
Yeah, I agree. I think the frustrating part for people like me and Andy Frisella and Rogan O'Hanley, DC Drano, and Ian Smith and Bobby Takenaps is that we're people who don't rush to the front line to
be the first one.
Yeah. And then I've been studying. I've studied the political climate in Ukraine since 2020 because I was fully I started to investigate certain political billionaires who had infiltrated an election in that country, similarly to some of the things that happened in the 2020 election, and it's a playbook. So these people, all successful people, what I will say about all successful people I've known, and I've known people who are, who I know some billionaires, I know some millionaires, I know, and anybody who considers them successful is, from whatever the measure is, they have a propensity to be repetitious. So if a plan works, they just keep doing it.
Yeah.
So I was very curious to understand what had happened, in 2004 during the Ukrainian elections and then the color revolution, and then additionally again in 2014. So when this all happened, I already kind of was like, I already had the cliff notes on this. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like, what's really going on? Whereas other people are like, Putin is this and that. The news, they pick, right? And even though we just went through the last 2 years of the biggest global gaslighting campaign, I mean, it was fantastic.
You really, almost admire it. You're like, wow.
Wow, how much power these people have. They annihilated our First Amendment rights. They convinced us to hate each other. They got us to stop talking to our family members. They broke up businesses. Wild. My band broke up. We split. You had massive lawsuits, people getting fired. First, the hospital frontline workers are heroes. Then a year later, they're getting fired for not getting the juice. And so everyone started to realize, like, wait a second, none of this is meant, like even the late bloomers, I call them, like the real duds. They're like in the 11th hour, they're like, this isn't
something's not right.
This isn't making sense anymore. Like, I don't understand, and so then you could see it, and then the political agenda and the corporations started losing their stronghold on people because all they have is our minds. That's what they can control.
It's wild, though, that they just switched the topic and all of a sudden everybody's seems like it's right back at the beginning.
But that's what an abusive narcissist does. It's a bait and switch, right? So so now it's like, what they're going to paint. They're going to paint out Putin and like Putin's this and Putin's that. And even like Trump supporters like, we got to get rid of Putin. I'm like, listen, I'm not rooting for Putin, but I'm not rooting for Zelensky either. I'm like, these two guys, like, they're just two bad dudes. And they're like, have a long history that is none of our business, and they've done a lot of shit. Like the Ukrainian government has committed atrocities. Russia has committed atrocities. This is all, America has committed atrocities. There's no nation that doesn't have blood on their hands.
Right.
You know what I mean? In the scheme of conquest, and establishment of a nation, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You ask Aboriginals what they think of Australians. You know what I mean? They'll give you an earful. So everyone has that. Nobody's got a clean slate, and I just think it's interesting how they're able to conjure up this like virtue signaling nonsense. Like there was a Instagram model, like a Miss World contestant from Ukraine, posted a picture with an airsoft gun and like it was on the news and they're like, Miss Ukraine goes to fight Russia.
Stop.
And I'm like, it's a plastic gun. Like it's a toy. It's a friggin' toy.
Yeah.
You know, and then people start calling it out and then she got trolled after that because the problem with the news, the media, and even the citizen journalists have started to get into the mental disease of the news is that it's an information arms race. And instead of being accurate, they want to be first. And that's what true misinformation is. And the people who control information like this, because if we're all confused, we can't figure out what they're doing.
And also the ratings they go up based on people's emotional response, right? So the thing that is going to elicit the most emotional response in people is what they're going to put out, regardless if it's true or not, which I wish there was accountability for. But going back to kind of like
that's how you can control people.
Oh, 100%. So, I mean, going back to kind of the topic here, you know, this addiction when it comes to the political scheme, we've talked about that a little bit. We've talked about social media a little bit, but what about just addictive behavior in general? And how do people recognize that something is now an issue? Like going from, okay, maybe I'm drinking, but now it's like an actual issue. It's an actual addiction now. Like where's that like turning point?
When you can't stop, when you lose the power of choice. Right? When you're like, I've gone to the gym 2 times a day for fucking 21 days straight. I don't look good. I don't feel good. Everything hurts. I have to go. I have to go. I have to run or I'll get fat. You know, I've been that. I used to run like 20 something miles a week and then go to work and stand up for 12 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because I just didn't want to be fat anymore.
In a small sense with social media, I recently took a break from it because I set boundaries for myself and I'm very good at keeping boundaries, but I all of a sudden wasn't keeping my own boundaries. And then I'd be on my phone saying in my head, why are you doing this? I don't want to be on this. And I'd be like, I don't care. And I would keep going. And I was like, wow, that's not cool. You know, it turned from like me having boundaries, being able to follow them to I was not following my own boundaries.
Yeah. But because look, everything is, I think the technology addiction is the most, I think food addiction is the hardest because if you can't abstain from it, you have to eat food, right? So people who are fat or lose weight or people who are still struggling with their weight, and some people yo-yo, they go back up and down. Dude, that's I have empathy. Like it's the hardest thing, you know, and I think we've had a terrible, I think it's a disgrace that the population has gone on board with like body positive because there's a difference between being body positive and then telling people who could die from being obese that they're beautiful.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like it's not what an aesthetic is, and some people are attracted to that, some people are not. It's not about aesthetics. It's about health. Right. And especially after like a 2-year pandemic where 90% of the people who died with comorbidities, the comorbidity was obesity.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, and we also have an issue in this country where over 2,300 people a day die of heart disease, but no one talks about it.
Right.
You know, we have a lot of problems that correlate with addiction, and food addiction is probably the hardest.
You know, and something with that is I look at that from like a spiritual lens, right? Like they're saying, you know, I am lovable and worthy and whatever. And it's not that you're not, like you are all of those things, but I think that you are not your earth suit. And I like refer to this as like our earth suit, right? Like you're a spiritual being and you are worthy, you are valuable, but like you need to take care of your earth suit too. You know, you need to.
But that's not being taught by society because it's
like they identify with this bodily thing. Like this is me. And that's where they gain their like love and value from, whether it's the extreme end of like a professional athlete that always has to be in perfect shape, or it's the complete opposite end of someone that's like, no, this is me. It's like, no, this body thing is not you. Like you are your soul and spirit inside.
Yeah. Well, some people think they're their car. Right? They're like, I drive this, so they think they're their job.
Right.
None of that's real. You know what I mean? Like anybody, I've had a near-death experience. Anyone who can tell you, it's like this whole thing is fucking.
Yeah.
It's like, it's temporary. You know what I mean? Like none of this is real. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It matters what you do here while you're here. But I think that it's also, you know, I have empathy with people who don't realize what they're up against. Like, dude, there are like the people in the most amount of power in the world are dark.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to be sick, right? If everybody is healthy,
They're not going to take their shit.
yeah, but like you look at the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they're supposed to monitor the food and the drugs, except they're basically owned by the pharmaceutical companies, and then the food companies are also work with the pharmaceutical companies because they need the pharmaceuticals because they pump them into the fucking animals, right? So they're all working on this thing together, and they're like, yeah, we'll have the biggest pumpers, and it'll aesthetically everything will look good, but it'll make them sick, and then they'll have to get drugs and medication from us.
Yeah, it's amazing business
to not be sick.
Yeah, an amazing business plan.
Yeah, and that's just the racket. Like if you were, every drug dealer who sells crack is giving out a free hit to get a crackhead for life.
Yeah, no kidding.
You're like, repeating customers. It's the same thing as like when you go to Whole Foods and they're like, would you like to try this fucking fizzy soda? And you're like, no. They're giving away cans hoping you like it, and then you'll drink it forever. Of course. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's go into emotional addiction and people who are addicted to toxic relationships and behavior. You know, we know oftentimes that comes from the relationships that were modeled for them as they grew up. But why do you think it is that some people go from toxic relationship to toxic relationship to toxic relationship, always thinking that it's somebody else and not them?
Well, I've been in several toxic relationships, and I never was like, it's not me, it's them. But I'm somebody, I go to therapy. I've done neurofeedback. I've done, what is it called?
Breathwork.
No, not breathwork. The stuff I don't like. I've done.
EMDR.
Yeah, I've done EMDR treatment. I particularly, it was a horrible experience. It was super triggering. And the kind of trauma that I have, it really made it a really rough time for me. So, but it works for some people.
Yeah, I was going to say, I loved EMDR, but mine was not a severely traumatic thing like yours was. It was a different type.
Yeah, like my friend Sonny had EMDR, and he was like, it was a miracle for him. So it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
I think I think maybe severe cases of PTSD, it can be not a good idea.
Right. Because it sends you back there for a little while.
Yeah, and Shane's the one that hooked me up with neurofeedback.
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. So I went to go see his doctor, Evie Shapiro, and she did all my neurofeedback sessions. But what I think is that I don't think it's an addictive cycle. I think there's such thing as there's love addiction, and I think everybody in general desperately wants to be we want to be loved, right? We want to. We see the world outside, and I think certain people who had abusive childhoods, we saw on TV normal families, and we saw our friends who had normal parents, and so as adults we want to replicate that. But unfortunately, what is familiar to us is a chain of behavioral patterns that are toxic, that are from the past. And so I personally have trauma bonded with other abused people who don't do work on themselves. And then all kinds of calamity can ensue. And so I've had 3 relationships in my life like that. And, it's like, it's like 3 strikes you're out. At some point you have to take a look and you're like, okay, in these 3 scenarios, what are all the same? All have a history of mental illness. All have a history of sexual abuse trauma by either their father or a close male in their family who was supposed to be responsible and protective over them. And, and all of them I won't try to fix.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. So I go to my therapist and I'm like, why am I doing this? And it's like, I'm looking at their stuff and looking at their stuff and not my stuff. And my stuff is that I grew up in a household with an alcoholic father and a mentally ill twin brother who my parents delegated the responsibility of. When we went out of the house, I had to look after him because he was sick. So I grew up feeling like my purpose is to take care of someone who is sick. That's why when in my early 30s, when I started to become a sober coach, I was so fulfilled in my life because I was helping these people who have really fucked up get sober. And I felt like it was healing a part of me that I could never say my brother.
Yeah. Wow.
You know what I mean? And so I transferred my unhealed wound with my brother onto these relationship partners, you know what I mean, without even knowing it.
Yeah, it's all unconscious.
Yeah. So I don't think that's, I don't know if that's so much an addictive thing as I've read that people say that you'll call into your world, you'll call into the relationships of your past until you're ready to heal them. So, you know, it's like, and then sometimes there are situations where people who are gravely injured just choose us, and then when we don't want to, you know, it's like sometimes it sucks, bro. Like I've dated someone with borderline personality disorder, and it's like dancing with a gorilla. Like the dance isn't over until the gorilla says so. Like, and it's almost scary to leave them because you don't know what they'll do. You know, and women and, you know, a man, you know, it's different for men and women. Like, you know, Valentine's Day just passed not too long ago, and you know, my friend Amy Nicole was murdered 2 years ago on Valentine's Day by a guy who she hadn't seen in 8 years. 8 years.
That's wild.
And only dated for 3 months. And I remember when she dated Garrett, because I've known her for 14 years. You know, she used to be a go-go dancer, and she became a therapist and a doctor. She got a doctorate at Pepperdine, and she go-go danced her way through school.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so like she's like, you know, she dated Marilyn Manson and Drew Carey and a bunch of celebrities. Like, dude, she was beautiful and everyone loved her. She had the weirdest friends, and she was the smartest person ever. And we were both adopted, and so we really we got sober around the same time too. So we really always bonded over like multiple things. And she was just a really good person. And like the dude, you know, he was just obsessed with her. And
8 years later.
Yeah. So, you know, and I've been in relationships where I've left and it's like 10 months, 11 months. You know, my ex has another boyfriend still like harassing women I date. I mean, you would get, you know, you know all about this. We've been friends for a long time.
We've talked about all this stuff.
Well, you've seen it, you know what I mean? And then like even women I'm around, they suspect, and then, you know, you'll get a phone call or like any woman I know, they're just like, hey, just who is this? You know, it's like psycho shit.
Yeah.
But then on the internet, they're like, everything's great. And you're like, okay, bro. You know what I mean? So
I think it's a lot of people that are acting out their unhealed trauma, right? It's people that are not dealing with their own stuff that then go and act that out on those that are around them, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
and a lot of what you were saying too, I talked about this in a podcast that released the day before this one. And we were talking about how, you know, it's kind of like the victim usually attracts the fixer, and the fixer usually attracts the victim. It's like this polarity. And then they get together and they both do their victim and saving type of thing, right? It's like the savior and the victim. And
yeah, but it's ego too. Like this is like you can't look. I've realized the humbling thing about the context of trying to fix somebody else and be a problem solver is that you don't leave any room for God, right? So I'm saying that God can't fix you on God's own time. So I'm going to intervene.
Yeah.
And every time I'm out, that's not God's will.
Yeah.
So anytime I'm intervening on what God's will is, then I cause problems for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's hard because like you mentioned earlier, a lot of it's unconscious until you become aware of it, right? Like until you go to your therapist and you're like, yo, why do I keep encountering this? Right. And then you find out. And then I think once you are aware to it, you can actually cooperate with God's will. And then it's like, you know, that saying of
no, it'll still keep happening. It keeps happening. So it's like depression.
It doesn't have to keep happening. Like once you recognize it.
Well, check this out. This is what happens.
Okay.
Self-knowledge avails you nothing. It's only surrendering to God's will, that your will in your life is turned over completely to the higher power of your own understanding, that changes and miracles start to happen in your life. Like everybody who's spiritual understands this principle. But the way that I look at it, the way that I see it is this. I walk down the street. I fall in a deep hole. I didn't see it. I can't believe I fell in this hole. I'm a stupid idiot. How could I do this to myself? It takes forever for me to get out. Finally, I get out. I walk down the street. I see the hole. I know it's there. I slipped. I fell in it.
Stop.
Oh, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I did this again. But at least I know how to get out this time. I walk down the street. I see the hole. I jump in the hole.
This might be a personal thing.
I jump out of the hole. That's funny.
Not me.
I jump out of the hole, right?
Not I.
I walk down the street. I see the hole. I walk around the hole. I walk down another street.
Yeah.
So it takes time. And so I say this because like people shame themselves for making repetitive decisions when it comes to that stuff. But it's like, dude, there's no virtue in unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
And there's no necessity for self-condemnation. Like God has already forgiven you for your mistakes. There's absolutely no reason to continue on chastising yourself. The world is outside to beat the shit out of you enough. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you got to suit up. You know, you got to suit up and show up. So it's okay if you make repeated mistakes. There's been times where I'm like, oh, this seems like a good idea. And then I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
You know,
Same.
I'm like in the door, out the door. I'm like, cool. And that's all right.
Yeah.
You know, and like, it's not always like that. It just seems like the traumatizing experiences we have with people have more impact. And so we tend to forget the beautiful ones. And so you can do almost like memory replacement therapy where you like do a list of positive, you know, relationships that you've had or positive people and how that went and why it didn't go this way or what, you know, because you got to keep your sanity.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, there's that saying that two halves don't make a whole. It's actually two whole people that make a whole relationship, right? And I think too often people are looking for that other half, or they're, you know, not conscious of the fact that whoever is this, you know, potential partner, that they're actually not on the same consciousness level or spiritual level as they are. And I think when you find somebody that is doing the work, is conscious, is, you know,
equally yoked doesn't mean in the gym.
Equally yoked, yeah.
Like,
yeah. Equal. Well, for me, it's they got to be more yoked than I. Must be more yoked than I. But spiritually yoked, it's a thing, you know. And I think when you find that, that's when it's like, okay, this is something that could have potential here. Once you go down the road of the toxic relationship and realizing that you're unequally yoked in the things that matter most, right? And let's be real, finances, mental, spiritual, relational, emotionally, like all these things tie into what I think can create, you know, a really good partnership or a partnership that completely tears you down.
Yeah, I mean, or you could do all the work and still date somebody who screws up your life. Like you could, you know, you could do. I've been in that situation.
100%. I don't think we can ever like protect ourselves fully from it, but
well,
yeah,
it's like I mean, I think a lot of people, you know, there's this weird thing, like right, like this platform and like what you talk about and everything, and there are people who just pretend. Right, they're like out there, and they're just used car salesmen of spirituality, and because they have no use for it, and they're just like, what can I do that people will listen to? You know, there's political commentators like that that I'm like, dude, you didn't even do any research. You're just like, look at what's happening here, and I'm like, you're literally an idiot. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's definitely easy. I think social media has made it easy for narcissists to create a false reality of who they are to attract people. But then, you know, somebody like me who it doesn't occur to me to be deceitful
100%.
or deceptive because I'm almost too, like I've said this before, like even in relationships, I've never cheated on anybody. I'm too arrogant.
Yeah.
I'm too arrogant to cheat because I would never sneak around.
Yeah.
Like I would never talk behind someone's back because I'll just punch you in your fucking face.
Right.
And like if people are like, oh, I'm like, just Google me.
Yeah.
I've publicly knocked out tons of people. Like I'm not a tough guy.
Yeah.
People who have tried to fight me literally have tried to attack me and gotten their ass whooped. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, that's why I haven't never gone to jail because I literally was not an aggressor.
Right.
You know? So I'm just like, okay, like what the fuck? I'm about it. So I would not, you know, I don't understand the premise of people
deceiving people,
faking things and this and the
putting
other.
on a mask.
Well, yeah, it's because they don't like themselves. I'm like, you know, I fuck with me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, like I mean, dude, we was laughing earlier. Like I often replicated, never duplicated. You know?
Yeah, 100%.
There's like many have tried, all have failed. You know,
miserably.
It's just like nobody ever upgrades for me. It's like there's my arrogance again, but it's true. Like I'm here for a reason. I don't know what it is all the time. I'm seeking it out. I'm actually in this process of figuring out where I'm supposed to be and what the next phase of my life is going to be. But it's like I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So, and when I'm like not okay, that shit's on the internet too.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have this like, yeah, fucking, I'm like, yo, I'm not good. I'm fucking crazy. Or like, I need to go to a meeting, or like, I'm depressed. Or I can't believe this is happening. All this shit that people are doing to me. Because weak people like to see they like to see a brave guy fall. It's like Dave Chappelle says. So if you're brave enough to stand in who you are and say who you are, people are gonna come after you. If you're brave enough to open your heart, sometimes you're gonna get a couple semen demons in there, and they say,
All right, is that where we should end it for today?
You're gonna turn into a semen demon.
Oh Lord.
But anyway, I highly recommend you turn off your phone for like 12 hours a day.
12 hours a day.
Yeah, just turn it off.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm saying that, but I'm not going to do it.
No, you're not at all. Okay, before we end here, do you have anything coming up that you want to share? Any
so
tour, merch, whatever.
I think we're going to be doing a flash flood merch sale at TommyVexOfficial.com. But if you sign up at TommyVexOfficial.com, you will get all the updates. We dropped a new single last Friday.
What's it called?
It's called Trust the Science, and it features Topher. And it's like a rap metal, like Linkin Park, Deftones kind of like
vibe.
Yeah, but it's like, so we got shadow banned. I wonder why. You got a fake Fauci tied up, handcuffed in a chair with Topher yelling in his face. Like,
I'm surprised it's not deleted, actually. So
yeah, I mean, whatever.
It's not the worst.
It'll be gone soon. We'll just, truthsocial.com is coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the song is on YouTube on my channel, and it is coming to, you're going to be able to download it on Friday. So it'll be everywhere. Yeah, streaming platforms, Spotify, iTunes. It's already on YouTube. It got 1.7 million views on Instagram.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is weird because I only have 104,000 followers.
For music artists, what's the best way to support your music when you put it out? For people that don't know.
I don't know.
Stream it?
No, streaming isn't really, I mean, look, the reality is buying concert tickets and buying merch, but also too, like, any institutional, like any record label or any fucking band or anything that is down with wokeness, don't buy their shit. Don't stream it. Don't do it. Just don't even deal with it. Right? That's the main problem. You know, a lot of people, and I know you have some conservative followers, and like all these artists that shat all over Trump. And now look at what Biden's doing and don't criticize Biden. Because I believe in freedom of speech. You should be able to shit on whatever president you want to. Yeah,
absolutely.
But if you're gonna talk about one guy and then not acknowledge the absolute abortion catastrophe of the state of this nation under Joe Biden's senile, demented nonsense, you shouldn't support those artists.
I mean, but Orange Man bad.
Yeah, but those people are puppets and they're doing what they're told. Yeah. They're not true artists. You know what I mean? Like Neil Young was like taking a stand against Joe Rogan, but his entire catalog was bought by BlackRock, which is a Chinese company that's spending billions of dollars buying up artists, publishing. Wow. So that they then can control them and tell them what to say and do. Yeah. Yeah, keep on rocking in the free world. Fucking clown.
All right, guys, you know the drill. If you enjoyed today's episode, do me a favor, like, share, repost. Make sure to follow Tommy. Actually, shout out your Instagram because you have to type in the entire thing exactly or it won't pop up.
It's @FreeTommyVext. That's it.
Nothing else. No underscores.
253 fake catfish accounts of me. Dude, somebody hit me up 2 days ago. I had to go every couple days now. I have to go live and explain to people that I don't have any other profiles.
Honestly, if they're falling for that,
this lady
I don't think there's helping them.
This lady gave some guy $10,000, and then like her friend was like, "Yo, dog!" Like he tried to boot up to me, and he was like, "Yeah," he was like all of 5'4", and I was like, "Yeah, okay, homie." Like he's like, "You're a scam artist." I'm like, "No, you and your friend are dumb shits." Yeah. So don't give anybody money on the internet. Don't give people. There's no such thing.
Photos don't prove anything.
Yeah, like I'm in a secret relationship with Beyonce, but that's different.
That's awesome. All right, guys, you know the drill. Share the episode, like, follow, subscribe, like the YouTube video if you're on YouTube, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks, Tommy, for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Later.